officially 2019. I know I'm probably a little bit late with all these videos by the time my December wrap up and my January TBR went up, but I have a bunch of end of the year, beginning of the year videos coming for you coming up. Today's video is my top 10 of 2018. It was really tough to do this, by the way. Really tough. Keep your eyes out for my 2018 wrap up and my 2019 reading goals video where I talk all about all of the books that I read, but these are my top 10 and I had a hard time with this. When I pick my top 10 books, I do these mid-year and I do these end of the year books. I don't pick them based on their rating. I sort of pick the ones that stick with me the longest because I read a lot of books. I read more books this year than ever before. So a lot of them kind of like fall out of my head. Some of them I even forgot that I actually read this year, which is really terrible. So I picked the books that stuck with me the longest, that I liked the best, and that's sort of how I rank them. Coming in at number 10 is All Are Wrong Todays by Alon Mastai. I read this one in April. I did it on audiobook and it was really good. This one is about a guy named Tom and he comes from 2017, but the 2017 that was envisioned in the 1950s and the 1960s. So like the crazy Jetsons style 2017s with floating cars and what have you. Anyway, he wants to go back into time to witness this monumental event that made humanity what it is at that time, but he sort of screws everything up. I'm getting the Flash vibes here, and he ends up in 2017 again, but in our version of 2017, and this one was quite interesting. You're trying to figure out what the heck's going on, and this one had a crazy twist at the end. Crazy that blew me away. I am not a huge sci-fi fan, but if you are like me and you're not a huge sci-fi fan, I would recommend this book because it was just amazing. The only thing about this one, I did it on audio, and an entire chapter was just completely filled with F-words. So if you have kids, don't listen to it out loud. Coming in at number 9 is Wildcat by J.B. Harker. I was actually sent this book to read for review from the author, and I was quite conscientious going into it because big books can be hit or miss for me, whether they're indie author or not. And I actually really love this one. If you are a fan of historical fiction or a fan of fantasy and you want to support an indie author, I would definitely recommend checking out this book. I do have an entire spoiler-free speed review for it if you want to know more information about it. This is a slow-burning book, and it is definitely character-based, it's character-driven, but it is so immersive. I loved the history of it. It's based on Iron Age Wales and Imperial Rome, and you can definitely see that in all of the descriptions. I really enjoyed it, which is why it's on my number 9, so go check it out. I'm gonna try to go through these really fast because I'm losing daylight and the lighting in here is awful. But coming in at number 8 is A Court of Frost and Starlight. I just talked about this in my December wrap-up, but I really enjoyed this one more than most people, I feel like. I think this may have come from one or two reasons. First of all, I read it in the winter, and it takes place in the winter solstice. This book came out in May, which I personally think was a bad time for this book to come out because it's very holiday feeling-esque, and because I read that in the holiday time, it's exactly what I was looking for, so I really enjoyed it. I also went in with very low expectations because I heard a whole bunch of mixed reviews about it. Most people weren't really impressed by it. I really liked it. It was very character-driven, it wasn't very plot-heavy, not a lot happened in this book, but it was a cute holiday read. Coming in at number 7 was A Torch Against the Night by Sabaa Tahir. It took me forever to read this book, to actually pick it up and to read it. The first half of this book went really slow for me. The second half of the book flew by, but the politics in this book is fantastic. The magic in this book is fantastic. The world building in this book is fantastic. I loved it. For those of you who don't know, Torch Against the Night is the second book to the Ember and the Ashes series. I don't know if it has a different name, but anyway, almost everybody loves this. This is a YA fantasy book, but it almost reads like an adult fantasy book because it's so complicated in its politics. I mean, there are definitely YA tropes in it and there are YA characters, but it feels like an adult fantasy, which I think is why I enjoyed it a lot more. I sort of fell away from the YA fantasy. I think throughout this year, as you'll see through my my top 10 books, I do still enjoy YA fantasy, but this one was more complicated than that, and I quite enjoyed it. Coming in at number 6 is The Land of Stories, The Wishing Spell. This is not The Wishing Spell, this is The Enchantress Returns, but I don't have The Wishing Spell. A friend of mine is borrowing it. But I love this book. This is a middle grade book, and I am not a middle grade fan. I do not like middle grade books. They tend to be bizarro, weirdo, and I can't handle them. This was phenomenal. We read this with my entire family, and everybody, including my husband, was captivated by this story. This follows twins Alex and Connor, and they are having a really hard time in life. Their dad has passed away and their mom is working a lot. They're visited by their grandma, and they've been given this book, and they fall into the land of stories where we meet all of the classic fairy tale characters, only with a twist, and they are trying to find their way back home and learning all kinds of things along the way. I thought it was a great adventure story. My daughters loved it, I loved it, my husband loved it. It was fantastic. I have a spoiler-free review for The Wishing Spell as well. In case you were interested, you can go check out that too. Coming in at number 5 is actually a series, because I couldn't pick one, but if I had to pick one, it would be the second book in the series, but that is The Themis Files by Sylvain Neuvel. These, again, are sci-fi books. I feel like I have been branching away from the fantasy, as you can see through these lists, and I've been reading all kinds of different genres, and I've been enjoying a whole bunch of different genres. But this one is about a woman who, when she is 10, I think, off the top of my head, she falls into this hole, into this giant hand. 10 years later, she's building this giant robot, and it comes from outer space, and they're dealing with all of the complications of that. It's a 3-book series. I listened to all 3 of these on audio. They have a full cast. It was phenomenal. I loved it. Again, another book to read if you are not a huge sci-fi fan. This one is a little more sci-fi than All Around Today's, but still really enjoyable. Coming in at number 4 is the first book that I read in 2018, and that's A Conjuring of Light by V. Schwab. This is the 3rd book to the Shades of Magic trilogy. I loved this book. Here's the thing with this series. It gets better and better. I read A Darker Shade of Magic. I wasn't a huge fan, but I liked it enough to want to continue on with the stories. A Gathering of Shadows was much better. And this one was action-packed from page 1. I loved it. I started off 2018 with a bang. It was phenomenal. I cannot wait for her to come out with another book series in this world. I have heard that she is going to do so, and that makes me very excited. Coming in at number 3 is The Last Days of Rabbit Haze by Anna McPartin. This one surprised me. This is a contemporary, and I don't usually read a whole lot of contemporary, but I do now, I guess. This one follows a girl named Rabbit, and she is dying of cancer, and she has a daughter and she has a family, and it just deals with the last few days of her life and a lot of flashbacks into how she came to be to the place where she is now, growing up, her childhood, teenage years. What I loved about this story was the family dynamics. A lot of contemporaries are broken families, are families with problems, and don't get me wrong, Rabbit's family definitely has problems, but her family connection and her friends connection, it's just so wonderful. Getting into this one was a little bit difficult for me. There are a lot of characters. It's a character-driven story, but it was so wonderful and so tragically sad, but so wonderful, so beautiful as far as friendships and family dynamics goes. I really enjoyed it. Coming in at number 2 is another adult contemporary, and that is The Quick Kiss Quotient by Helen Hong. This was a total guilty pleasure read. I don't read a whole lot of books about this. I'm trying not to turn bright red as I talk about it, but I heard nothing but good things about this book, so I ordered it for myself and I read it, and I really enjoyed it. This one is about a girl named Stella, and she has autism, and she feels like she has no experience with relationships, so she goes online and she hires Michael, who is an escort, and he needs to teach her about relationships and sex, and it's just so hysterical. It's an own voice book, which also helps, but I loved it. There are more books coming out in this series, and I cannot wait to read them, because this book was just a total guilty pleasure, but I loved it from page 1 to the last page. It was fantastic. And coming in at number 1 is Gemina by J. Kristoff and Amy Kaufman. I actually did read Obsidio before any of you asked me, but I liked this one better, which is sort of unpopular. I feel like most people loved Illuminae or Obsidio, and Gemina was kind of in between. I liked the characters in Gemina better. What I liked the most about this book is that I'm not a huge horror fan. I don't like horror, I never read horror, but this one had a little bit of scary, creepy horror in it that wasn't overly done, that I could appreciate. and I liked the characters. These books, the whole series, by the way, is phenomenal. Just because I picked this one doesn't mean that I didn't like any of the other ones. But I read Gemina and Obsidio this year, and of those two, I liked this one the best. This was my favorite book of the year as far as my mid-year top 10 goes, and it's still my favorite book of the year. Those are all of my top 10 books. I didn't talk a whole lot about them because, like I said, I'm losing daylight, but I will leave all my wrap-ups down in the description box below for you, so you can go check them out, as well as any of the spoiler-free reviews that I have for the books as well. And I will leave you my mid-year top 10, because if you want to know more of my favorite books, go check out those, because there are a bunch in there that didn't quite make the top 10 of the year in total, but were definitely some of my favorites. Let me know down below in the comments what was your favorite book in 2018, because I am building my 2019 TBR and I am very excited. New year, new books, more reading. Huzzah! If you enjoyed this video, give it a big thumbs up. If you have not yet, I would love it if you subscribe. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.